Okay, come back to one. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to introduce Boyd Fraser.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tony. Thank you, Rob. Now, before I ask my questions, which are quite bracing, I will say that I have spoken to Rob before the meeting, and that was very encouraging, and I look forward to speaking with Rob in regard to these issues, and also with Tony, because I do feel a sense that there is a genuine commitment to core values and achieving those, which will actually advantage the company, shareholders, employees, potential customers. Now, this is the thing. Now, this is quite bracing. The Chairman's report states that Perpetual has maintained our strong focus on delivering to business and community expectations. As a shareholder and client of Perpetual, I beg to differ. On September the 21st of this year, Richard Gluyas from the Australian newspaper wrote an article in regard to my advocacy on behalf of the family of Sir Edward Weary Dunlop and my own family's bitter dispute with Perpetual re the administration of my late father's estate. Disturbingly, both issues remain unresolved to date. Despite the adverse media coverage, which obviously threatens Perpetual's brand, I am unaware of any efforts by Perpetual to apologise and compensate the Dunlop family for the granting of unconscionable low-doc loans to Dr. Alexander Dunlop whilst he was suffering from chronic schizophrenia and living on a disability pension, and the subsequent enforcement in the Supreme Court of Victoria. Alexander died penniless in 2014 in a Melbourne nursing home. Now, I think most of us here would say that's tragic. I asked the Chairman and the CEO, what are your intentions in regard to this matter? I should also add that Alan Jones from TGB Radio is very anxious to hear Perpetual's response. Now, I'll lead on. Concerning my own family's conflict with Perpetual, which has caused my wife and I...
Would you like?
Oh, yes, we'll answer
Why
that
don't we
first.
deal with them, because they are quite separate issues.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely.
And it's important. A lot of the shareholders will be hearing this for the first time.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it might. Let's deal with that. Look, first off, thank you, and thank you for coming to the meeting. I'd like to just state the essence of this matter.
Yes.
Okay. On behalf of the Dunlop family, you've brought proceedings with the Australian Financial Complaints Authority, AFCA, to reopen a settlement which had occurred in 2011 on a loan default involving Alexander Dunlop, son of Weary Dunlop, a great Australian, as we know. Alexander, as you said, is now deceased and is represented by his brother John.
Sorry, could you please speak up a little bit?
Oh, I'm sorry. I was looking at Boyd.
I'm a bit deaf too, actually.
So am I.
It's age.
Just to recap, an action has been brought to reopen a settlement that had occurred in 2011 on a loan default that involved Alexander Dunlop, now passed away, and that action has been brought by his brother John, assisted by Boyd. On its face, the settlement at the time was judged to be fair and reasonable, and the settlement was supported by independent advice for all parties, including Alexander, and was effected under the umbrella of the Victorian Supreme Court. The family is now seeking to reopen that and to seek compensation from AFCA. The loan default concerns a loan that was made to Alexander in the 1990s by a challenger company, and through the acquisition of that company, it is now owned by NAB, the National Australia Bank. As lender or originator, the NAB carries the prime responsibility here, we believe. Perpetual's role was trustee of a bunch of securitisation mortgages, of which this was one. That was our role. Now, NAB, as you know, through their chairman-elect, is reported to have said to you that they empathise with you and the Dunlop family and will work through the AFCA process with you. As Perpetual was the trustee, it's a party to those proceedings. We too empathise with you and will work with you, as you've said, you've discussed it with Rob. So we do empathise and will work with you through that process. And we too share the view that Weary Dunlop was a great Australian. There's no question here, and we want to ensure that the right thing is done. But you will appreciate that this goes back many years. At the time, everybody thought they did the right thing. It's fair enough to re-raise it, but at the same time, We need to work through that process with you and with NAB.
Yeah, no, and I very much appreciate that spirit, because it isn't one single company that was involved. In fact, there are 3 companies involved, and also the mortgage broker who was a very disreputable individual. But yeah, no, I very much appreciate that. The National Australia Bank is working through that now, and I think if that can be done collectively with Perpetual,
Correct.
that will be a wonderful outcome.
That's our intention. Our intention is to do that with NAB and be clear on what is a fair result on the reconsideration.
Yes, absolutely, for this remarkable family. Now, leading on, concerning my own family's conflict with Perpetual, which has caused my wife and I great distress and significant financial cost, and which would not have occurred had Perpetual acted in the best interest of my late father's estate, I asked the Chairman and CEO why Perpetual has waited until the article in the Australian newspaper before seriously considering my entirely legitimate claims in regard to the administration of my estate over a period of nearly 4 years.
I think, Boyd, it would be highly unfair to say that we waited for a newspaper article to mention that. You're well aware that we have been in discussions with you and on considerable effort. Again, to give the shareholders a bit of background, you've lodged a complaint against Perpetual in relation to the administration of your father's estate.
Yes.
This is totally unrelated to the issue we just discussed.
Yes.
And your father left his estate to your late mother and to you and your siblings. We've been administering their estate, and now that your mother has passed away, condolences.
Yes.
We need to sell the family home, which she had a life interest in. You reside in that home, and we then need to split the proceeds between all of the beneficiaries. You're alleging 2 things: one, that we mismanage the assets of the trust, and 2, that you should be able to continue in the family home. We've been in discussion with you on both matters. I'm advised that Perpetual has organised a meeting with you and your barrister in mid-November to really see if we can resolve this with you. We believe that at all times we've acted as we need to in the best interests of all the beneficiaries in the estate, but we're quite open that if you feel that there has been any mismanagement or there are issues we've not considered, we're in dialogue with you. You're represented by a barrister, so I'm quite confident we'll resolve these issues.
No, absolutely. And I very much welcome the fact that I will be meeting with Rob on the 12th, and I'm very confident that these issues can be resolved in a very amicable fashion. Now, there is only one last issue. What has happened in regard to my AFCA complaint, which, as you know, has been lodged, unfortunately, Perpetual have made strenuous efforts for that complaint not to be heard. Now, in the interests of goodwill, I would have hoped that that wouldn't have been the case, because it's clearly in the interests of the estate that the AFCA complaint is heard, but unfortunately your submissions, which have been many, have strenuously fought against the AFCA complaint being heard, which I assume you are unaware of, and I probably assume Rob is unaware of as well.
Well, we're deemed to be.
Absolutely. Well, it's plausible deniability is what they say. But I would hope that if you had...
I will look at that.
Yeah, I would hope that if you had been aware of it, you would have actually said...
It'll be consistent with what I've said to you, that we will work with you to sort this out.
Yes. So, look, I'd like to congratulate Rob. I'd like to congratulate you, Tony, for taking up this position, and I'm sure these issues can be resolved, absolutely, in a very amicable fashion.
Thank you.
So the flight from Melbourne to Sydney was very worthwhile.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
It's a beautiful city.
Absolutely.